Hello, hello. So welcome if you're joining me live for this particular free webinar. It's called The Creator's Edge, Getting Started. And I'm very excited to be delivering this particular webinar because it's the start, it's introducing kind of the new direction that I'm going in. So my name is Lynn Hilton. You might already know me. I'll talk a little bit more about myself during the presentation, but I'm a coach. I spend a lot of time in the world of performance, but I also work with non-performers as well, helping them to free up their limiting beliefs and then figure out what they need to do in order to move themselves forward and achieve their goals. Now, if you are attending live, it would be lovely to hear from you. I've got already a hello from Jay. Hi. Just let me know where you're watching from. It'd be really lovely to find out who's where. So I'm currently in Manchester in the UK. As you've probably heard by my accent, I'm originally Australian, so an Aussie expat. Yeah, so let me know where you're at. And of course, if you're watching the recording, then hopefully you will get in contact with me at some point down the track and let me know where you are. So let me start this poll. So the first question I have for you is, do you have a clear picture of what success is to you? So I'm going to start that poll and I'd just like to know where you're at. Hi, Nara. Lovely to see that you're on here from Maui. Always sounds so exotic. And we've got Lindsay in Tewkesbury. Fabulous. Ali in New Orleans. Gosh, we're very international here. So I'm going to be sharing my presentation. This is a little bit of an experiment. I haven't used Webinar Jam for a while for webinars. Oh, we've got Sharon. Oh, thank you very much. That's lovely of you to say so. Are you in Ireland, Sharon? Is that the Sharon I'm thinking of? Yes, so if there's any problems with the presentation or anything, then just let me know. Pop it into the chat box. I've got Grace from Hertfordshire in the UK. Good. So some people from the UK. I love it. Okay, so let me get started because I've got lots of things to share with you and talk about. Now, let's see if this works. Let me know. It's not being very it's not very obvious. Hang on a minute. I may have to share the whole screen in that case. Entire screen. So, oh, you're in London. Did we meet in Ireland, Sharon? Is that what I'm thinking about? Right, so this isn't... I'm going to see if I can add this presentation. So just talk amongst yourselves. Sorry, because obviously not being on Zoom, you can't talk amongst yourselves. Let me see. So let's see, moving out of Dropbox, yes. Let's put it on the desktop. Bring it there. Let's see what happens when I do this. So it might take a few minutes to upload. In the meantime, I'm just going to talk about why it is that I'm doing this particular presentation. So for some time, I've been working on the Performer's Edge, which is a one-year coaching program that I devised. It started way back when I was working at the Academy of Contemporary Music with singing students who were struggling with getting through exams and trying to figure out what their identity was in terms of being a musician and singers. And so I started that course then, because we didn't really have, we had, sight reading, we had composition, we had performance, we had all sorts of musical and performance type classes, but we didn't really have anything about how do you make a career out of this and how do you create your own identity. So that's where this started, and that would have been, well, I guess it's around maybe over 10 years ago. And then I brought it into my studio, where I delivered it as a short course over a period of about 6 weeks. And then I did, as I started to add on all the different things that I do, like the resilience coaching and the hypnotherapy and all these kind of things, I started to bring that into the Performer's Edge. And then I created this 1-year program. So it could help performers and singers. And I mean, the idea was to be just generally artists, but I obviously started focusing on singers. So it could take them from wherever they were and help them and support them as they figured out where they wanted to go and how they needed to do it, as well as eliminating limiting beliefs as we went along, building up resilience and just strategizing their career. And it's been very successful. I love doing it. It's a really deep dive when I'm working with artists. And I've realized that actually it can be expanded out into all sorts of creative areas. And in fact, it's not even just about creativity in terms of the arts, but it's creativity in terms of if you're going to create something, say, for instance, a software developer, or you're creating a business, or you're creating a new program or a new some sort of project at work. So I realized that actually it can expand out. So here we go. I actually have got this working now. So boom. Is this showing? Can people let me know if you can see? Oh, Sharon, we met in LA. You're currently on a train in Finsbury. Okay, yes, well, you can watch the recording if anything happens, so don't worry too much. The recording will be sent. I do have some files and things to, documents to share with you, but what I might do is add that into an email that follows up from the webinar. Okay, so can people... Oh, yes, Nara says yes. Great. I shall assume everyone can see that. Okay, so I love my quotes. Anyone who's joined me before on a webinar knows this. So progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. I think this is quite significant, and it's certainly something that I've encountered time after time when I'm working with clients, that they may want to change, they may be aware that something has to change, and they may have been told they need to change, and they might even agree. But if they haven't changed the mindset, then nothing changes. Everything stays the same. And this is why I always say it starts with mindset. So that's the beginning. So why are you here? Well, you might be here because you want to succeed at something, that you might be overwhelmed and confused and feeling alone on your journey. You might know where you want to go, but you're just not sure how to get there. And you might be feeling stuck in your current journey and where you are right now. So you have a dream and a goal. You have a heart's desire. You might already be on the road. You might have started it some time ago. You might be on the road, but not quite sure, where to go, what the direction is. You might not have a map to where you want to go. You might be tired of doing all of this all by yourself. It can be very, very lonely being the creator. You might be nearly there and you're just not sure how to get to the end stage and what's next after that. Or maybe you're transitioning, so you might be moving from one area to another, or taking something that you spend a little bit of time on and dreamed about, and now you've decided to make it grander and bigger and more focused. So what's your biggest challenge? Look, if I haven't listed your challenge, why don't you let me know in the comments box? So for many people, it's time. And I tell you, time seems to be going a lot faster these days. I did read something interesting about that, about why it feels that way, but I've forgotten what it is. It may pop back into my brain a little later. It might be money, because sometimes, especially when we're a creator, there's going to be time for a while where we're not able to earn any money out of it. It might be that you feel that you don't have the talent for what it is that you want to do. You might be struggling with your mindset. It might not be in the right place to help you move yourself forward. You might be finding certain resources are challenging to access. Maybe they're difficult to find. Maybe you don't know where to find them. There may be some know-how in terms of what you need to do. Say, for instance, I often work with singer-songwriters or people who want to be songwriters, and they need to develop their songwriting skills. Or I've also worked with creative writers, and they're still developing their creative writing skills. Maybe your health is standing in the way. Certainly for myself, for anyone who's been watching me on Instagram, you know that I've been on a particular health journey, trying to eliminate some fatigue and brain fog and other health issues that I've had. And I've noticed that as I've been getting that sorted out, my energy levels and my focus and my brain fog is clearing up. So I'm able to really focus on the things I need to do. It may be there's an ability issue. So say, for instance, you want to be able to accompany yourself as you're performing, but you haven't really developed your skill set in guitar playing or piano playing, so that there might be some ability issues there. Maybe you don't feel like you've got very much support, and you're struggling in that way because you're feeling lonely, or because it's tough to do all this by yourself, and maybe you have something else that's a challenge. So Ali's got time, mindset, and know-how. Yeah. So let me know if there's something there that I've missed. So Michelle Obama, who I really admire, says you should never view your challenges as a disadvantage. Instead, it's important for you to understand that your experience facing and overcoming adversity is actually one of your biggest advantages. And this is something that I've definitely noticed over the years. I've been working with performers. Well, I've been a performer myself for 30 odd years, and so I've been hanging around with performers for probably actually more than 30 years, but certainly as I've been working and teaching and coaching performers, which is 20 years plus, I've really been interested to observe those people that are still at it 20 years down the track and those that aren't. And definitely those who are overcoming their adversities as they go along are more likely to continue. And in actual fact, the more they do that, the better they get at it. And soon, eventually, hopefully you don't even see it as an adversity necessarily. You just see it as another challenge that you need to figure out how to get over, get under, get around, or get through. So the biggest obstacle by far when it comes to working with my clients, in my experience, and it doesn't matter whether I've been working with the performers or people who are in the business sector, and that is mindset. It is the biggest obstacle. And I recognized this some years ago, and hence went and did my training in hypnotherapy and also left co-belief process, because I realized if I didn't help that person eliminate the beliefs that they had about themselves, then it didn't matter how good they could sing or perform, how much experience they got given, how lucky they got, in meeting the right people, what other people thought. It didn't matter what other people thought. If they didn't believe they were good enough, if they didn't feel like they were capable, if they were, experiencing anxiety as a result of worrying that, about performance, then that was going to stand in the way of everything else. And I have to, there are times when I have to be honest, when I've been very sad because I felt someone's had incredible talent and ability and something to share with the world, but they just haven't been able to get over the mindset issues. Well, now, I realise that it would be really useful and beneficial for me to be able to help people to do that because, we're on the spot and quite often things come up in the session rather than sending someone off. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, and then we're going to maybe have a little discussion or some thoughts about what is success. We're going to look at the 3 ingredients that I think we require to hit that sweet spot of success in achieving our goals. And then the 4 key elements, there may be 5. I think it's 4 key elements that you need to be working on constantly. And we've got some worksheets to do, which I'll give you and tell you how to use so you can get started at home. And then I'll also talk about, if you're interested in working with me, how we might get started with that process by just having a conversation initially. And then, of course, I'll be answering any questions. In fact, I find it easier to answer questions as we go along, so don't feel like you need to wait to the end. So pop your questions into the comments box if you have any. Did the poll come up? Oh, yes. Oh, no, it didn't because I didn't publish it. So now you'll get the poll which says, do you have a clear picture of what success is to you? So I'll look at that again in a moment. Alrighty, so a little bit about me and my journey. There I am as this precocious 6-year-old starting school, very chuffed to be in this uniform, feeling very important, as you can see. And I often look at this photo and just think, wow, not so much now, but when I was going through, sorting out some of my shit, I was like, wow, look at that. Look how confident that little girl is. And what happened? What happened after that? Because it definitely didn't carry all the way through. I feel like I'm getting closer to her now, but, it's taken me a long time. 50 odd years has gone past since that moment. And I think that's what's been really interesting about what I'm doing is that I've been working on myself all the way along as well to achieve my personal goals. And that's why I think, I can really help and understand my clients because I'm putting it into practice constantly. So when we look at my story, I'm not going to delve into, the in-depth. I just want you to have a look at some of the things that came up for me when I was thinking about what were my themes, what was going on, what were maybe some adversities that I had, challenges as I started out. So I was born to a single mother in the 60s in Australia, in Perth. And the reason why I say that is because even now, I love Perth, by the way, but Perth is still a little bit kind of parochial. And in the 60s, it was, if you think about your quintessential 50s family structure, we were living that in Perth. And of course, my family unit didn't fit that. There wasn't a dad. And then the other thing which you might notice is I was born mixed race. I was half Chinese, half Swiss or half European. And so I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And in fact, the other thing which I was actually talking today to somebody I'm doing therapy work with, and I was telling him about when I was young, I was the only child in the beginning until I was about 9 that looked different to everybody else. And because when I was younger, I looked more, Chinese. And I used to always get questioned about it. About, oh, where are you from and why don't you look like your mum and dad? So my mum married when I was about 6. So by the time I started school, I did have a family unit, but I didn't look like my family unit. So being mixed race and being half Chinese in Australia, which had the all-white Australia policy up until about the 70s, which basically meant, anybody's not white, don't want you in, there was a lot of racism, and that's something which definitely I had to encounter as I grew up. I was female in a time when females still weren't quite as empowered as they are now. Through the 70s, that started to change, and it was just starting in the 60s, but it certainly hadn't reached Perth by that stage. My mum, who tried to get a loan to buy a boarding house that she could manage and set up her business, she wasn't allowed to get a loan because she wasn't married. So I grew up in an era when being female was definitely a disadvantage for many things. I had learning difficulties, so I didn't read until I was about 10. Still can't do maths. I had tutors for both, and it helped with the reading. And when I started reading, I became an avid reader. But the maths, I was like, nah, not motivated for that one. As long as I can do percentages to figure out, what I'm going to save when I go to a sale, that's all I really care for. So I can do the basics, but that's beyond it. I was very musical, but I was in a non-musical and arty family. I grew up middle class, and that was, a pretty good place to be in the 60s and 70s in Australia. It was a pretty affluent time when I was younger, probably until, even into the 80s as well. So I had a very, what I call very blinkered view of life. I didn't even know that there were, honestly, poor people. And I can remember the first time I discovered that Perth actually had people who were socially challenged, who were in the lower socioeconomic environment. And I was shocked. I just never encountered it. I only encountered it through church and school, through charities, but it was always in another country. So I had a very, very sort of protected, blinkered view of the world. I lived in different countries. I lived in 3 different countries before I was 12. So I lived in Australia, Switzerland, and the UK. I went to school in 3 different countries with 2 different languages. So I was sent off to live with my grandparents when I was young, before my mum married my dad, my stepdad, because my mum couldn't manage to look after me and run her boarding house. And so I learned Swiss German was my first language. And then I got brought back to Australia when I was 5 or 6, when mum and dad got married, and I had to learn English. And I remember feeling very misunderstood and finding it difficult to communicate and getting lost. I got lost once and I couldn't explain to anybody where I lived because I couldn't even speak the language. It was a very frightening time. I was first generation Australian. I don't know if anyone else here is first generation of anything, but being mixed race, first generation, puts you a little bit on the outside. Well, it's seemingly so. That's not necessarily your reality, but it feels like that. I was very average at school. In fact, I would get comments like, you come across as very intelligent, but that's not reflected in your marks. Don't know what's going on there. Maybe you're not doing enough work. And I did a lot of work, but it just didn't go anywhere. And I think now, that probably I had a form of dyslexia. It probably would have been diagnosed in this day and age, and I would have got a lot of extra help and it would have been fine. But I had to figure out how to learn. And that challenged me all the way through, challenged me through nursing. And then when I went and got my music and education degree. But by that stage, by this time I went to university for my music degree, computers existed, and that really helped. So they're just some of the things that influenced me when I was a child up till I was about 18. And then as I got into adulthood, I started off in nursing. I thought I wanted to go and save the world. I did lots of different types of work in nursing after I finished my qualification, general hospitals. Then I went into pathology, occupational health, and then ended up in the film world as I got closer and closer to dropping nursing altogether. I then went into performing. Performed as a jazz vocalist in and around places in Perth, and also a little bit in the States and here in the UK. And at the same time, I started teaching singing, and I loved it. I loved teaching. And in fact, I remember when, as a child, I used to love playing that game of being the teacher, and all my friends had to be the pupils. And my dad actually created I had a little balcony outside my room, and he put a blackboard up that I could then write on. I loved that. So I think teaching has always been a theme in my throughout my history. So I went into education when I did my music degree. I decided I didn't want to do a performance degree. By that stage, I was 36, and I'd done a lot of performing already. I've been performing for about 10 years, and I felt like, about 10 years, more professionally maybe for about 6. And I just felt like I wanted to focus on something that would give me a job. So I did music education. But the first couple of years was just jazz, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. It felt very indulgent. So I performed. I also, at some point, I did a massage and holistic therapy course because I thought maybe I wanted to go in that direction, but didn't do that. But it opened up my mind to natural therapies and looking at alternative ways of healing people, which I definitely incorporate today. What else have I done? Well, I've worked as a voice teacher, as I said. I went into education. I was the head of vocals at a music school, doing contemporary music. I've been very entrepreneurial. I've published a magazine. I've done other training in resilience and also hypnotherapy. And I'm transitioning more into coaching now in my private practice. But I also train people. So I train singers who want to become singing teachers. And I designed a 20-hour program, which we're about to accredit next year. So that's very exciting. So if you look at that, it seems really like, whoa, and I look at it and I just go, whoa. And what is this? It's just a huge mess, really. It's a mess of everything. How do I figure out who I am, where I'm going, what I'm doing? And this has been part of my recent journey, is trying to figure that out and trying to untangle all that mess and to make it into something that helps me understand what the themes and the threads are, how I can incorporate that into my current work. And it's taken me some time. I would say probably this journey started about 4 years ago. So I looked at my story in much more detail. And in fact, I'm going to show you how to look at your story to be able to do the same exercise. And I looked at, well, what are the golden threads? What are the themes as I run through? And transition was one of them, that ability to move from one place to another, to learn one language to another, to adapt to a new school, to find new friends. So transformation was a big one. And then not being afraid. I mean, there's been many times I've moved from one city to another or one country to another. And, I set up in London when I set up my teaching practice. I didn't know anybody. I hadn't done very much in the way of teaching, just a couple of years while I was at uni. And I just plonked myself in London and set up my teaching studio. Now, I did other things, to earn income as I went along, but I just didn't have any fear about it. And I think for me, it's that transformation, and that change isn't a bad thing, and that actually just give it a go. There's also a theme of like, oh, just give it a go. Why not? If someone comes to me with a project or an idea, I'll always say yes first and then figure out how to do it later. So that's been a theme throughout my life. Also, I loved being creative. There's lots of creativity in all the things that I've done. The magazine was incredibly creative. Obviously, singing and performing was creative. And, I said to you earlier that I did a massage course, which was a massage makeup course. And I also did makeup for amateur theatres. I love that creative process. So that's something important for me too, to always have that connection to creativity. I'm very holistic in the way that I look at people. Yes, I've got a health medical background, but now I've expanded out to thinking about the person holistically and understanding that everything's connected, and how do I help people join up those dots so that they can move forward and heal and achieve their goals. I love solving problems and untangling tangles. That's something that I still love doing. I love doing jigsaw puzzles, and if there's a knot in something, I'm the one that's sitting there undoing that knot forever until it's done. I'm also always developing and evolving and learning more and constantly a student and learning. That used to worry me, but now I'm like, no, that's just me. And in fact, sometimes I'll take some of that information and I'll do something with it. I'll incorporate it into my business, and other times I won't. Sometimes it's just about, when you go on that journey, the people that you meet. What else? Reaching for the stars. I've always had the ambition to leave a legacy. And the other day I realized, actually, through the teaching training course that I do, the singing teacher training course, there's a legacy that can be left. Other people can carry it on after I've gone, and that's amazing. And in fact, I leave a legacy towards people I'll never ever meet in my lifetime, because I'm helping teachers to go out and teach, and they're influencing other people, and then they're influencing others, and it's lovely. I didn't have any kids, and I just feel like this is the way that I leave my legacy. And that was a big theme when I was 29. I really wanted to leave a legacy. And there are lots of other connections and themes. I love teaching. I love self-development. I love eliminating beliefs and confronting my beliefs and challenging the constraints of other people's and my expectation of myself. And I'll carry that through to working with my clients as well. Also, another thing that's been very important in my life is feeling accepted and feeling part of a community. And it seems like wherever I go, I create communities. So my biggest challenge, just like everybody else in the beginning, it was, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I'm not capable. I'm too stupid. I'll fail. I'll be rejected or judged. What I want is not available to me. So just like everyone else, I have had these beliefs. I no longer hold them, but it doesn't mean I don't have any negative limiting beliefs, but they are less and less and less. So I had many aha moments throughout my life, and I think it's very important for us to have that self-awareness about moments that are really key in helping us. There was the moment when I was 29 where I woke up and realized that I wasn't actually doing what I wanted to do, what my heart's desire was, and that if I died very soon, and that I don't mean to be morbid about it, but it was just, I had this dream where I'd gone to the pearly gates, and wherever it was that I was asked, so are you happy? Are you happy with your life and what you've done? And I had to go, no. And it literally woke me up, and my heart was just flying, because I realized I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, which was singing and performing. And I made a move to do something about it. So it's not just about having that aha moment. I actually then made a move and decided to move over to the UK and go and learn this craft of singing and performing and give it a go. Another aha moment was this realization that actually the being a jack of all trades or Jill of all trades is not a disadvantage. It's actually an advantage, because I used to think, oh, but I don't master anything. I just do all these different things, and then I don't get really good at one thing. But what I've realized is that actually all of these things have now become my tools that I help other people with. I had to dig deep. I had to find coaches and mentors. I had to do reading and watching videos and doing courses. I did lots of things to make sure that I evolved and developed, because I realized I just couldn't do it all by myself. I also had to trust that I had the right instinct for going and finding the things that I needed. I needed to do training sometimes, and that obviously takes time. And I had to set my goals and make plans. I had to reflect. I had to be accountable. I had to find other people to help me become accountable. And so now I can say with absolute confidence that I help creative people gain the confidence, eliminate the obstacles, sort of overcome the limiting beliefs, so that they can access their creativity and build their resilience in order to explore their potential and fulfill their heart's desire. And I love saying that, because it's absolutely what I do. And it's what I want to do, and I want to help people to be their best selves and to express themselves fully. And I know that it's possible because I've taken that journey myself. So what is success to you? You know, when I was, I wanted to leave a legacy. So that was one thing about, that I thought was success for me. I thought for a long time that maybe I wanted to be a performer and to tour the world performing and singing. But I was in New York for 9/11, and it really made me stop to think about what do I want to do with the rest of my life. So I was already 40 by that stage, and I realized that actually I was really loving teaching, and the whole performing thing, whilst I love being on, in an environment where I'm creating music, the whole getting the gigs and being, performing for people who are not really listening, because, as a jazz vocalist, you tend to be more background music unless you choose, an artist's pathway, and I wasn't choosing that pathway. And I just went, actually, I don't mind performing, but it's not something that I like. When I watch my friends do it, they're absolutely, they have to do it. It's just a really, really strong integral part of themselves. And for me, it was just, and I enjoyed the process. I loved making the music. I loved doing arranging, and I did love singing, but I didn't have to do it in front of a bunch of people. So that was, a very aha moment for me. And then it redefined my idea of success. And so as you think about what success is, are you thinking about it in terms of money or in terms of happiness? Maybe it's in terms of security. Maybe you want acclaim or acknowledgement. Does anyone want to share what their thoughts of success are? That would be interesting to hear, whether, you've decided that success is a particular thing for you. And the problem is, if we don't really know what success is, then it's very difficult to start planning how to get there. For some people, it's independence, financial independence. For some people, it's to be able to get paid to doing what they love doing. So in order to understand what success is for you, you might have to do a little bit of exploring or self-exploration. So thinking about, what are your interests? What are the values and desires that you have? And do they all match up? And also defining your why and your purpose. And then you'll come to a much more fulfilling idea of what success is. I think especially in the performing arts world, in the beginning, a lot of people enter it saying, I just want to be famous, or I want to tour the world. I want to be, on stage being applauded by all these people. But no, they don't really think about, does it fit in with where they're at and who they are and what they know so far? So success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you will be successful. And I think that's really important for us to understand, especially when you're thinking about success in, say, very monetary or materialistic ways, because there are many people, I'm sure you've read these stories too, who've become successful in their craft or art, and they're still not happy. They've made their millions and they're still not happy. So money is not the key. But I think there's incredible satisfaction, and this is how I feel, and I've been feeling this for a long time, is this happiness in getting up every morning and working in the area that I love working in, and doing something for work that I enjoy doing day in, day out. So let's move on to finding that sweet spot of success or achieving your goals. So there are three key components, three key ingredients to this. The first one is passion. I've realized that I sometimes would work with somebody who was putting in, a lot of work, they had a lot of talent, but they really weren't passionate about what they're doing. It might be that they didn't particularly like the genre. So for instance, when I first started having singing lessons, I learnt with a classical teacher. And whilst I loved singing and music, I wasn't so keen on the whole classical side of things. And I didn't want to do musical theatre, and she kept pushing me in that direction. And so I didn't really practice very much. I got a little bit despondent, and eventually I realised it was because actually where I wanted to be was jazz. And as soon as I got into that, then I spent hours and hours doing study and working on my voice and learning how to improvise and time, the timekeeping and the phrasing and how to swing and all that sort of thing. You didn't need to pay me. I didn't care if I got paid for it or not. I would still be doing it. So passion is something that's really an important part of succeeding. If you don't have a passion for it's unlikely that you're going to be able to maintain it. So passion is energy. So feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. This is from Oprah. And if you're a follower of Mel Robbins, you'll also know that she talks about it's probably more important to think about what gives you energy than what gives you passion, because you could be passionate about lots of different things and it might change throughout your life. But actually what gives you energy is where you want to be working. And so for me, what I get energy from is helping people and being able to share, all this amazing stuff that I've learned and help other people to gain from it. But we need to obviously maybe take some time and to sit and think about what energizes me. And it's quite easy. It's like, what puts a smile on your dial when you talk about it? What could you talk about incessantly, and not in a complaining way, but in a joyous, positive way? And what would you do for the rest of your life, even if you didn't get paid? So they're some quite good questions you could be asking yourself about what am I actually passionate about? And so you can be passionate about music, but it might actually be something very specific about music, like might be about harmony, or it might be about writing, or it might be about communicating with the other musicians, or it might be about interacting with the audience. There might be, one specific aspect of music that you're passionate about or performing. So another person who talks about something similar is Marie Kondo, and she talks about sparking joy. So Marie Kondo is a bit of a neatness expert. So years ago, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, I Marie Kondo'd everything. So I did my drawers, and then I did, all my so that's my clothes, and then I did my office, and then I did my kitchen. And one day during this process, I was driving up to London to go and teach. So I was still working with singers and doing more technical work. And I was feeling very heavy and draggy as I was driving up to London. And I think if I could have, I would have kind of kept putting the brakes on. And I was like, wow, what's this about? And I realised that I wasn't really enjoying the idea of going into London to teach. I love my students, but I just wasn't enjoying the process of the work that I was doing and working mainly on voice and technique. And, it just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And Marie says, ask if it sparks joy. So when you go through all your gear to sort it out, you pick every item up and go, does it spark joy? And it sounds really weird if you've never done it before, certainly very woo-woo, but it's amazing how quickly the answer comes. Your answer will be very quickly yes or no. And of course, if it doesn't spark joy, you get rid of it. So I thought, well, let's ask the question of my teaching, does it spark joy? And I came back with a resounding no. And I was so shocked, because I had spent many years developing my skills and abilities as a singing teacher and building up my reputation. In fact, that was my reputation as a teacher, was my skill in helping people technically. And I was like, wow, it doesn't spark joy. And once again, I was like, okay, need to do something about this. And then I started the plan, and it took some months to actually extract myself from teaching one-to-one singing lessons. And that's how I did that, was through sparking joy. So does the thing that you're doing spark joy give you energy? Are you passionate about it? Or are there other things around what you do that might give you the energy and passion to do the job that you're doing? So either is relevant. So the next thing that's very important is the plan. So if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. I really like that quote from Benjamin Franklin. So have you got a plan? What should be included, of course, in the plan? What shouldn't be included? And when should you create it? Well, I think a plan should be created anytime, right now. And one way to do it is to think about where you want to be and reverse engineer it and go, okay, so if I want to be here in 3 years' time, what will need to be in place in order for that to happen? So what will have happened just before that, and before that, and before that, and before that, until eventually you get to what do I need to do next in order to take me forward in that direction of this particular goal. I talk about SMART goals. I'm sure you've heard about SMART goal setting. You can look it up if you're not sure, but being specific, measurable, I think it's appropriate. What's R stand for? Relevant. A is not appropriate then. A is something else. Someone might remind me if you remember. R is relevant and T is time-based. So having short-term, medium and long-term goals, and not just having goals, but having action plans. And I'll give you an action plan template that I have that will, and some just, help sheet to help you understand how to create action plans, because they're achievable. Thanks, Ellie. Yeah, so the making sure that you have action plans for the things that need doing. Sometimes people put in diaries, sometimes people put it on whiteboards, and I'm going like that because I've got whiteboards everywhere. There are various ways of doing it. Having accountability is the other thing. So don't be just saying I've got this goal and then keep it secret. The more public you are and the more you share it, then the more accountable you will hold yourself. Or you might even have an accountability buddy who has also got some goals that they want to achieve and want to be held accountable to. And remember to review and adjust as you go. It's not always going to be relevant. There were certain things that I thought were relevant before, like for instance, when I thought that I wanted to tour the world being a singer, then it changed, and so I adjusted. And that's okay. So some questions that might help you is if I called you in 3 years' time and you told me they'd been the best 3 years of your life because you'd achieved exactly what you wanted and you were well on the way to what you wanted to achieve professionally and personally, what would you be telling me? So answer that question to yourself, maybe write down what's happening in as much detail as you can, and also emotionally how you're feeling about it too, because we've got to tie in emotions to our goal setting. And then the other question is the one that I had, which once again, not trying to be morbid, but it is a bit of a showstopper, is like, if you were told that you're going to die in the next 3 months or year, would you be happy with what you've achieved so far? And if not, what would have made you happy? If you want to achieve something important, you have to be very specific and find out exactly what it is. And you've got to ask these questions of yourself. So the third ingredient is the work. So if people knew how hard I worked to achieve my mastery, it wouldn't seem so wonderful after all. So that's Michelangelo. We spend, minutes looking at his work sometimes when people go and see it, in Italy or in a museum or art gallery. But in actual fact, you think about the hours that took to create that bit of art. And it's not even that particular piece of work, but everything that he did prior to that, to getting to the point where he could start chiseling into marble, it's mind-boggling, really, when you think about it. So the work, what is the work you have to do? How do you have to go about doing it? When do you do it? Where do you do it? And with whom? So when we bring these all together, if we don't have a balance of these things, so if we've got passion and plan, then we're probably going to have poor results. So we're very passionate, we've got a plan, but we're not doing the work. If we've got a plan and we're doing the work, but we're not passionate about it, then we're probably going to lose motivation. And if we're doing the work and we're very passionate, but we don't have a plan, then it's very possible we're not going in the right direction, or we'll end up totally in the wrong place. So these are those 3 ingredients. So the other components that you need to be looking after, your mindset. I already talked about that earlier. For me, this is number 1. Before you do any, after you've decided what you want to do, the next step really is to get your mindset sorted out. Get rid of those negative beliefs, that are causing you to behave, to think, to react in ways that aren't helping you move forward or do the things that you need to do. Once you got rid of the belief, I'm not good enough, I'm not capable, I'll fail, I'll be judged poorly, you'll just go and do the work that you need to do to achieve your goals, and you won't care. There were many things that I used to not do because I didn't want people to know that I didn't know, or there'd be many times when I would, pretend like I didn't need to have to do something, and then all it did was made me feel more fearful, rather than just go and do the work. Now I'm just very honest, and if somebody, like the other day, someone said to me, I'd love to hear you singing, and I think it's so ironic, really. I am a singer, but right now my voice is very unfit and I couldn't do it. And before, I would have come up with all sorts of excuses, and now I'd say, yeah, I'd love to sing, let's just see what happens. And I remember seeing Barbara Streisand do that very same thing when someone asked if she'd warmed up or what she did to get her voice ready, and she said, oh, well, it doesn't really worry me, it's just whatever comes out. And I was like, oh, kind of admiring that, because obviously she's got a big stakehold in having a good voice, and she'd obviously got to the place where she went, I'm enjoying it and it is what it is. Yeah, so mindset, being able to do the networking, making sure that you're resilient mentally and physically, having that focus, the creativity and the flexibility is all tied in with our mindset. The other thing we need to be constantly working on, and it doesn't matter how old you are, but certainly as you get older, it's something to be thinking about, is your health. And that could be, obviously, if your voice is important in what you do, and to be honest, it's important for most people because that's how we communicate. So vocal health, mind health, body health and soul health, looking after yourself in a 360 way. All of this helps. So this morning I was having Reiki because I know that I need to have, the energy and the spiritual side needs to be looked after just as much as my physical health, which is what I'm doing with my current changes in diet. Because if there's any issues in these areas, if you're feeling down, or if you're feeling bloated, or if you're feeling, like you're missing on spiritual well-being, it will impact everything that you do. And then development is another important area where we need to be constantly working at. We're developing our craft, our business, our abilities, our understanding of, where we are and where we're going and what we need to, add on to it. So we're constantly developing personally and professionally. Things are always evolving and moving, and it can be really frustrating, and especially in this day and age when it all happens at such speed. And I think that's one of the reasons why it feels like time's going so quickly, is because things change like this, whereas before, I remember, so I was born when it was black and white television, and I remember when colour television came in. I remember when sort of telephones became more of a household thing, that Australia was a little bit behind it. People used to go to the corner, to the local phone box. And then when I grew up, actually, we didn't even have a telephone in the house because my dad said it wasn't necessary. I'm like, I can't even imagine life now without my mobile. But so I remember that, that was quite a few years. And then many years later, the microwave came in, and then the mobile came in, and then computers came in. And that was quite a lot of years. But once computers came in and the digital side of technology started to evolve, then it seemed like it just every year it got faster and faster with the changes. And I wonder if that's part of the reason why it feels like time is going so quickly, because we're constantly having to learn new things. But, we need to keep up to a certain extent. It's part of the way that we might have to run our business, do our marketing, communicate with our, it might be the business people we have to communicate with, or if we're building a fan base, if that's relevant to what we're doing. So that's always going to be something we're working on constantly. And then identity, sort of as a creative and as a human. And are your values and your ethics, all of these things, are they matching up with your identity? And are you expressing your identity through your creativity in a way that's authentic and true to you? So the first thing to do, really, and this is I'm going to now this is a new thing for me as well. Oh, hang on a minute, have they disappeared? Oh, there they are. I want to see if I can share a file with you. So, share. Tell me what happens. Can someone tell me what happens? Because I've done a share, and you should have been given the option to. I'm hoping you can download this the audit. So the first thing to do is to take a real honest look at where you are right now. Can I? Is anyone getting the that self-audit file? Let me know in the chat box if it's coming up. So as you look at hopefully you can open it up. And this is something for you to do in your own time, but I just will run you through it. So check off all the relevant columns. So you've got 1 is no, 2 is sometimes, 3 usually, 4 often, 5 always, and NA not relevant. Actually, it probably should be NR. Sorry about that. And then just tick the relevant columns for each of these particular areas. So mindset, health, development, identity, visibility, and then review your scores. And just, you don't have to add them up or anything, but just notice, is there a propensity for one area to be sort of towards the lower numbers? Are there some areas that are higher that you didn't realize that were in place? And so big high five. And obviously, then it helps you start to plan what you could be doing next to help you develop this area to move it along towards 5. So that's the first thing to do, is your self-audit of yourself, your mindset, health, development, identity. I've got here performance and other because that was more relevant to singers, but you can adapt it to. I've got visibility. I mean, you could be thinking about performance if you're a performer. So the file to download takes us off the webinar, so we can't see both you and the file together. Okay. Can you actually download it, though, to look at it later? That's the important question. So the next thing I want to share with you is my story. This is in way more detail, similar to what I summarized about my story. So this is looking at what are your first memories before you were 21? Things that were character forming, crossroads that you experienced, negative or positive things that were significant in your life. Who were the significant people in your life? Why did they leave an impression on you, whether it was negative or positive? What's your education, training and experience? Any awards, prizes and commendations? What are you good at? And this is always an interesting one because it's when you're thinking about what you're good at, doesn't always necessarily, people don't always make a connection with how that can help them in their current situation as they form, their goals. But for instance, this is a really good example. I've used it many times. When I moved from nursing into teaching, I was so excited because I was like, I'm going to be a teacher, singing teacher, and I'm going to be singing and performing and singing, teaching, and then nursing's out of my life. And one of my friends one day said to me, oh, you're so lucky to know all that stuff about medicines and health and well-being and, anatomy and physiology, because you can use that, when somebody's sick or if they have any medical questions, and you can help them in your singing teaching. And I literally went, what? Oh my God, I didn't even ever think about that. And it just suddenly occurred to me that I have this totally unique selling point, I suppose, if you want to use that kind of speak, with regard to my service. And it took me a while to really figure out how to bring it all in. And eventually I did, because I did performing arts medicine as a master's, where I brought that health and performance side together. And I was just like, I couldn't even believe that I hadn't thought about bringing those two things together. So it's really good to just lay all that stuff out, experiences, knowledge, skills, etc. And then maybe at some point you'll start to see some threads. Your aha moments where you sort of had an epiphany about something or realized something about yourself. What gets you out of bed? What drives you? What do you geek out on? What could you spend hours talking about? Why are you an artist, creative, musician, performer? What sparked the interest? So tell that story, tell it in long form. So major challenges and obstacles that you've overcome so far. And then what are your values? What are your top 5 values? And I highly recommend that you just go on the internet and look up value words, and then pick out the ones that you feel are really important to you. And then your personality. What are 5 words that you would use to describe yourself? And then I recommend that you reach out to maybe 3 to 5 people that you know, either through work or personally or family, and ask them to give 5 words that they would use to describe you. It can be sometimes a little bit challenging to do that, a bit confronting, but I highly recommend it as an exercise, because every time I've made people do it, they've come back with these positive words that they hadn't even thought about for themselves. And then what winds you up? What makes you see red? If you were going to be an activist, what would it be about? And it could be political, social, religious, stuff that isn't right with the world and humanity as far as you're concerned. And then if you were the boss of the world for one day, what would you change? How would you fix it, and why? So then the final thing to do is to review your story and your identity as, and your values and all of these things, and find out, what are the golden threads? What are the themes between past and present? What are you noticing? Is there resilience there? Is there a theme of teaching? Are you really good with new starts and creating things? Are you an extrovert, an introvert? Are you good at problem solving? Are you futuristic about the way you think? Are you into healing? Do you, are you always pushing yourself? Are you very empathetic? Are you one sort of person that's always caring for others? So start to pull the threads out as you start to see these themes. And this starts to become part of your identity, because the next thing that you do after this is you figure out, how do I take those things that are important essence of myself, make them a little bit bigger, or incorporate them into whatever it is that I'm creating, and how I'm showing up in the world, how I'm presenting. As a performer, obviously it might even tie into the kind of organizations that you link yourself with, the projects that you might set up, the kind of music that you do, the theme of your stage setting, or it might be, something to do with your style, your personal style. So looking into the past, asking others, looking at life-changing moments, light bulb moments, your life lessons, your preferences, your passions, the negative and the positive things that have influenced you, things that you've overcome, and, the if you were a boss for one day. So that's my story. Then the next thing to do is to create an action plan. And I think this is really key, because all of this stuff is wonderful to find out about yourself, but now you need to action it so that you can move forward towards your goals and towards your success. So let me share. I've got I've got the action plan. So this is sort of like a worksheet, or a help sheet. And then the other one that I'm sharing with you is the template. So don't worry about the template for now. That's just for you to get started on. You can create your own, in Excel or write it out or whatever. But with the action plan, you have the goal. So what is the overall goal? And I've got a good, an example that I've set out there. What are the various projects that are related to that goal? What are the strategies that you have to incorporate to make those to take the projects to the next step? And then of these strategies, what are the various tactics? What are the jobs that you have to do in order to do them? So my example here is I need to increase my fan base and reach. So that's the overall goal. And the projects might be, I need to book a 2-month tour over 10 cities. I need to, who are the people that myself and the guitarist, the process is creating a 3-month plan campaign. So these are 3 projects that I'm working on. And the strategies are to ID the venues and the cities through Google searches, checking out to see what other bands are doing, asking friends, looking at for industry advice. And I'm going to give myself a date for that. So I start that by the 3rd of January and I finish by the 3rd of February. I might be collating all this venue data into an Excel, and I need to make some phone calls. I need to email some people, and I need to also email potential venues. And I need to also create a marketing plan for the current fans that are in these specific cities that I'm going to, and see if I can start getting people coming to these gigs. And then tactics might be things like Google search, attending a seminar, contacting, Bob, who's done the similar kind of tour, checking out such and such a band who's very similar to your band, and see where they usually go and where their fans hang out. Maybe it's checking a musician's directory for contacts. So you have some very specific action plans now to take yourself towards your goals. So what's next? Well, I want you to do a self-audit and start the My Story worksheets. Sit on it for a bit, take a few weeks, come back and add some more in, have some conversations with people and see what evolves out of it. And then review it, and then make a checklist of some short-term, medium and long-term priorities. You may want to start your action plan right from that moment. And then just take 1 or 2 things that need to be addressed in this moment that are your priorities. So you might actually go through some of these tactics or strategies and highlight them as, red is urgent, amber is sort of, that's, number 2, and green is kind of like at some point, it needs to be done. So give it a priority. Find someone to be accountable with, either a group or a buddy, so that, and you might start with weekly calls. So with my accountability buddy, we worked every week for quite a long time, and then we went, I'm talking about over a year, and then we went to every 2 weeks, and now we're monthly. And of course, don't give up. If you want to succeed in whatever creative area you're in, you will have to do some work. And of course, you know, there's always someone who says, oh, what does it take to succeed? Or, you know, how do you become blah, blah? And I always say, well, I don't know if someone will succeed or not. All I know is the people who have succeeded have never given it up. They've never given up on their dream, on working at what it is that needs to be worked at. So that's the only thing I do know. So let me tell you a little bit about the Creator's Edge in case you're interested at this point, or even just want to have a discussion about it with me. It's a 12-month tailor-made program. We work for 12 weeks, 2 hours a week, one-on-one, and we work using a variety of different things. So first of all, obviously, I'll do the triage. I will be creating a blueprint plan along with you as to how we're going to move forward. I'll help you with the sweaty work bit, you know, help you with strategies, help you overcome limiting beliefs that are standing in your way, help you build your resilience. We also evaluate your resilience with a psychometric test. And we then redo that test in 3 months' time to see how the difference is. And I've had a lot of success with that. Because of what I've realised is, yes, the mindset obviously needs to be on board, but if our health isn't there, that's going to also hamper us as well. And then so I use this methodology of triage, blueprint work, evaluation, and then getting you on the road. We also do 9 months of once a month a call, which can be used either as a catch-up or actually doing some more coaching work or maybe elimination work as things come up. And if this is something that you think you might be interested in, then you can book a discovery call with me. And I think I've got you can either go to my website or, here we go, you can go directly to the booking site, and you can it's usually a half hour to an hour, just depends, where we go into where are you right now, where do you want to be, what's standing in your way, and how I can help you. So I hope you've benefited from this getting started, and maybe it's going to kickstart you into getting started. For some people, it might kickstart you into doing the next thing that you need to do to keep on your journey. I love to hear from you. I love to get some feedback on what you thought about this particular presentation, if you thought it was helpful, if there was anything more that you would like. And let me just make sure I've shared everything I want to share. So the poll said, do you have a clear picture of what success is to you? We've got 60% no, 40% yes. And there is another poll, which is, okay, I would like to know, do you have a clear idea of what your next step is moving away from this webinar right now? So I'll wait for that answer. Look, in the meantime, if you want to connect with me and find out more about me, linhilton.com. I know it's spelled L-I-N-E, but it is pronounced Lynn. You can drop me an email, info@linhilton. And I'm also on Facebook under Lynn Hilton Coaching, and Instagram under Lynn Hilton, and also LinkedIn. I've recently removed myself from Twitter because I felt like I was a bit overwhelmed with it all, and I wasn't using Twitter that much other than to watch other people's, what other people were doing. Maybe, I'm interested to know whether you use TikTok and whether you find it at all beneficial in what you're doing. So, okay, so we've got 100% response from the people who are attending live, saying that they know what their next step is. Oh, no, it's changed. We've got 66 to 33. So there's a maybe. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me. I really look forward to connecting with you somewhere along the line. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And I will probably do some more stuff as I go along, as I start to create this this program further and develop it further. So in the meantime, all the best with whatever you're doing creatively, and look forward to seeing you next time.